Jacques Derrida was one of the most famous, controversial, but also wise figures in recent French intellectual life. Derrida was born in 1930 in El Biar, a suburb of Algiers, in what was then French colonial Algeria. His family were Jews, his father a salesman for a local wine firm. He suffered greatly from the anti-Semitism of Algeria's majority Muslim population, and was deeply marked by the experience of having been in an inferior position at the nexus of 3 different religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, all of which claimed to speak the truth, none of which knew how to treat the others with particular respect. In 1949, just turned 19, Derrida travelled to Paris to take up a place at the prestigious École Normale Supérieure. In time, he became a celebrity intellectual around Europe and America. He was hugely glamorous, a good-looking man with great taste in raincoats and haircuts. He had a rich, diverse, and complex love life. Deconstruction is the word most commonly associated with Derrida. Essentially, deconstruction means dismantling our excessive loyalty to any idea, and learning to see the aspects of the truth that might lie buried in its opposite. That once we begin to examine it closely, almost all our thinking is riddled with a false, that is, unjustified and unhelpful, privileging of one thing over another. Over his 40 books, Derrida deconstructed a range of key binary terms: reason versus passion, masculinity versus femininity, profit versus generosity. His hope was that we could learn to live more intelligently with some of the conflicts that lay beneath these terms, that we could come to see that both sides were onto something, that both were a bit wrong, that both needed each other, and that the tension between would by necessity always prove irrevocable. It might look as if Derrida was always using deconstruction to attack tradition and the free market and to promote a left-wing egalitarian agenda. But he was a great deal more subtle than this. For example, in his deconstruction of the idea of equality, Derrida proposed that the assertion that equality is always better than inequality, though this might be a modern liberal axiom, is in fact unstable and obscure. And he pointed out that some of the best human situations we know are obviously not examples of equality in action. To deconstruct an idea is to show that it's confused and riddled with logical defects, and that we must keep its messiness constantly in mind. Derrida was criticizing our tendency to imagine that behind every problem lies somewhere a good and neat solution. We are for him creatures destined to live our lives without clear answers, and that the craving for them is at the root of our troubles. He wanted to cure us of our love of crude simplicity, and to make us more comfortable with the permanently oscillating nature of wisdom. For instance, he argued that we might be rightly confused about the merits of capitalism and socialism, or the relationship between love and sex, but that we should never rush to conclusions around these topics. There are useful things to be said on both sides of these equations. Being confused and uncertain around such concepts isn't a sign of weakness or stupidity. It is, for Derrida, the central mark of maturity. Derrida's tactic was to glamorize this condition and to give it a positive ring, which is why he brought back into use a beautiful Greek word, aporia, meaning impasse or puzzlement. He was proposing aporia as a state we should feel proud to know and to visit on a regular basis. Confusion and doubt are not embarrassing dead ends in the Derridian worldview. They are simply evidence of the adulthood of the mind. One of Derrida's chief targets of criticism was a way of thinking that he called logocentrism, by which he understood an over-hasty, naive devotion to reason, logic, and clear definition, underpinned by a faith in language as the natural and best way to communicate. Derrida, who loved music and art, stressed that many of the most important things we feel can never be neatly expressed in words, spoken or written, as a logocentric tends to forget. An instance of logocentrism which particularly interested Derrida was the prestige of the idea of IQ, which measures primarily a person's ability to solve logical puzzles, but which largely ignores many other qualities of mind, for example, telling us very little about a person's capacity for friendship, for being a parent, for having fun, or managing their emotions. For Derrida, certain people might not be so brilliant at completing geometrical sequences, but that would tell us very little about their skill at making a success of a marriage, a business, a holiday, or a party, all of whose importance Derrida understood well. As an esteemed professor who lectured in the world's best universities, Derrida, who was also the snooker and football-loving Algerian Jew, was casting doubts on the entire foundations of the modern intellectual worldview. Derrida didn't want to remove all hierarchies. He knew it was right that kindness should be privileged over cruelty, wit over dullness, generosity over meanness. But he also understood how often we unwittingly dismiss things, people, and ideas when their opposites bask in what might be an arbitrary status. At his best, Derrida is a voice of modesty and patience, asking us to see what might be of value in those ideas we too easily overlook, and to get curious about why it might be nice to be always, even if only for a little while, on the other side of any debate.